Hello, my name is Yvonne from the German Projector for Sewing Facebook group. In my videos I explain to you the programs Inkscape and Affinity Designer. I would be happy about a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to my channel to not miss any new videos. You are a designer and need support or help to convert your files, feel free to send me a message via the website below. In this video I show you how to align your pattern pieces well on your fabric in advance with the Affinity Designer version 2. This only works on single pattern sizes or fabric sizes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to write me in the comments. The easiest way is if you have the fabric as a whole, for example 50 cm long and 140 cm wide. If you have only a part of the fabric, you can do this, but you must trace the rest of the fabric with a projector. It's the same as you can also draw patterns from paper cuts with a projector. There is also a live stream video in which I sewed a jumpsuit. There I show in advance how to trace the fabric and later align the cut. I show you the whole thing here with the cut with layers. If you have a pattern without layers, it works the same way, but then you have to pull out all the individual layer objects or you create the layers beforehand. Sort your objects into layers and then you can continue like here. Here I show it with a just bought piece of fabric. I recommend creating a layer for it and maybe saving the whole thing under a different name so that you don't destroy your original file somehow by mistake. To create the layer, go to Layer and click on New Layer and position it to the very bottom. To do this, either drag the layer to the button or click on the corresponding button at the top. The layer must be selected. Maybe label the layer. I just write fabric in it. You can also write side plan. Just double click and type it in. Now we create the fabric. For this, the layer should be marked and now you select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle, no matter how big or small. To enter the appropriate size, we have to change the measurement to centimeters or inches. To do this, at the top of the ruler in the left corner, right-click and select centimeters. Here we can enter the width and the height of our fabric. In my case, the pattern pieces are all on the fold, which means I haven't duplicated them yet. If you prefer to cut on the fold, then just enter half of your fabric wide here. So most fabrics have a wide of 140 or 150 centimeter, and accordingly you just enter here either 70 or 75 centimeters for the wide. Then you have the corresponding height. Since it is a child's cut, we need about 50 centimeters. Then you can think about which color has my fabric. For this we need to choose the filling and choose the color of my fabric. You don't have to do that, but especially if you have several fabrics, it might be quite good to remember which fabric you wanted to use for this pattern piece. To see it better, let's go down a little bit from the opacity here. I always create my side plans for individual sizes. Therefore, I simply delete all other layers. You can also hide them, but this is more confusing afterwards because I move the labels with it and then it is no longer correct for other sizes. At the latest, now you should save it under a new name. The best thing to do now is to group your pattern piece with a label, so you have only one object per pattern piece. Now I mark the single object and can position it according to the grain on my fabric rectangle. And so I can then create the pattern piece in a fabric saving way, or see if the fabric is sufficient at all. To duplicate a pattern piece, you can either right click and say copy and paste, or simply hold down the Control key, select the objects and then simply move the mouse. So now if you add a second cut, you could create a side plan for the whole fabric right away. I've only done this once so far on a nice fabric that I wanted to use to the fullest. By the way, keep this in mind when creating the rectangle. If you have a fabric that may shrink when you wash it, then please use less length accordingly. I have become accustomed if I buy a fabric either to wash and measure it again or simply 10% less in measure enter. So for example, with 1 meter of fabric, I put in only 90 centimeters. Just as a tip. I see now here, for example, that the skirt is no longer fits out of the upper rectangle. We would need a second fabric. So that I know how much fabric I still have to buy for the skirt, I duplicate once the rectangle and choose another color. Now I can position my skirt here and we need the whole thing once and duplicate and mirror. Now I can go and say I need a little less up here Of course, don't forget the seam allowance because the fabric is doubled. So now want the skirt fit out completely. And I can see over here, I need about 40 centimeters depending on the fabric. Should it shrink, you also here just take a few centimeters more. You can test how much fabric you need for your cut if it is not specified in the instruction. If you have a small projection surface, you can now also create guidelines or helplines. These will help you later to lay out the fabric accordingly. If your pattern piece can always be projected as a whole, you don't need to do this. My projection area is usually only A1, so it is not enough for adults' pants. In my example, it's a child's cut, so I'm just improvising now. I create a rectangle for myself. The green one is my projection size. If you want to make your projection size, you can enter the data below accordingly. Now you can either just leave the rectangle in, or you can select the drawing pen and draw a guideline on the line of the projection rectangle. So just click once at the beginning and double click at the end, and you would have a projection guideline here. It is best if a cross line, treat pass or fold line also crosses at this line. If there is no line, you can simply draw another line from top to bottom. It will help later to realign the fabric correctly. We would have to do the same for the sleeves. We can draw this line a little further to do that, and would have now entered our projection helpline here. Sometimes it's also better to lock the rectangles in the background so that you don't accidentally move them. For this purpose, there is a small lock symbol at the top. You can now lock either the single layer or just the object. Now the rectangles can no longer be moved or edited. To edit them again, you just have to click on the lock icon again. We are at the end of this video. I hope it was helpful to you. You can find more videos about Finity Designer on my channel. Feel free to leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I wish you good luck with your projects. Bye bye!